I've been reading from Rebecca, and I'm at the part where Mrs. Danvers has her mysterious guest. It is a beautiful day outside, and I have my second cup of coffee, and now I'm going to sit for my writing session. For this session, I wrote 87 words. I'm at page 200 of Rebecca. I am beginning to get the impression that this is a story where the main character is becoming slowly and inadvertently possessed by the ghost spirit of Rebecca that kind of haunts Manderley. And this possession is happening in a way where the main character is wanting to know the history, the backstory of what happened. And as she delves further into the psychology and the wonderings about Rebecca and her story, she is becoming more and more like usurped in her own spirit. But this possession is so subtly done, framed in the curiosity of a naive and young girl, and also framed in young love that can also be this kind of sick love. I'm getting the idea that there is a suggestion that memories of a dark, prohibited, or traumatic nature create ghosts themselves that then drain and suck the life out of the living. This happens in real life quite often, and it doesn't just exist in the realms of horror fiction. I think horror tries to conceptualize and produce some form of all these deep, dark things that happen in human existence. A very modern example of someone being haunted is someone who dates someone new and they get this feeling that perhaps the person they're dating isn't quite over their ex, and that's a real thing. I read somewhere that a reason why the ancient Greeks had such a force of life in their stories was because they lived as if they could see and interact with spirits. I think about what the ancient Greeks would say about such a scenario as someone feeling haunted by a current love interest's ex, and they would say it is a very real haunting. It's not just an imagined situation, it is a physical manifestation. What we see as the physical manifestation in the main character is her losing weight, her skin becoming so pale. She becomes the ghost and embodies it, and this is the imagery that is evoked in the scene with Mrs. Danvers, lightly suggesting to the main character to consider the white dress for the ball. The color white is loaded with representations, so we think of the virginal lamb being offered as a sacrifice to become the ghost's embodiment. And it is an Ouroboros in a way that the beginning, the virgin, becomes death, the ghost. Then we get this idea that the beginning is the end. Today has been another very, very full day, so I am now going to sit for my writing session. It's evening time. I'm gonna make some tea, get myself in the right headspace, and then tomorrow I'm hoping to do a book haul update. For this session, I wrote 211 words, and my week's total word count is 1,275. For this session, I wrote 161 words. Let's talk about books. New in my library, I have my own copy now of Either Or by Elif Batuman, and I have my own copy of The Possessed by Dostoevsky. These two books I discovered at the library, and I immediately fell in love with them, so I ordered my own. I also got books on acting, and this is because I wanted to get into the psychology of artists who express with their body. My thinking behind this is that our realities are very much shaped by our thoughts and then our actions that follow suit. So if I want to change my reality, there has to be something in my mind that changes the way I interact with the world, the way that I express myself in this world. So I thought some books on acting could teach me how to extend the expressions within myself in a new way. So to begin, I have The Lucid Body by Faye Simpson. I have On Acting by Sanford Meisner. And then I have To the Actor by Michael Chekhov. I also did pick up an ebook version of Standing in Space by Mary Overly, and that's been a very meditative read for me. I think I'm going to pick up the physical copy though as well. I don't know if many people know this, but there is an online archive called Internet Archive that allows plenty of free access to books that have been digitized. I find a lot of books there that may not be available in my library, or books that I want to sample before I purchase. Next up, I have Dom Casmurro by Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis. He is a Brazilian author, so this was translated from the Portuguese, I believe. I'm going to read the back because I think it explains pretty concisely what this book is about, and then I'll give a sample read of the first page or first paragraph. In this exuberant new translation of the classic 1899 novel, esteemed translators Margaret Jewel Costa and Robin Patterson have captured all the hilarious, maddening, and utterly compelling idiosyncrasies of one of Joaquim Maria Machado de Assis's most complex characters. Supposedly writing his memoir, Bento Santiago, a charismatic yet mischievous narrator, suspects his wife, Capitu, of having an affair with his closest friend. Withdrawn and obsessive, our anti-hero mines the origins of their love story, beginning when they were neighbors playing innocently in the backyard, to a short spell studying for the priesthood, and through the birth of their child who he fears doesn't resemble him. Set against the backdrop of a rapidly modernizing Rio de Janeiro, Dom Casmurro is a dark, subversive comedy from a progenitor of modernist fiction. I'm going to read the first paragraph of chapter 1 so you get an idea of the vibe of this book. One night, on the train back from the city to Engino Novo, I happened to meet a young man from around these parts with whom I had a nodding acquaintance. He greeted me, sat down next to me, spoke about this and that, everything from the moon to politics, and ended up reciting a few poems he had written. The journey was a short one, and the poems may not have been entirely bad. Since, however, I was rather tired, I did occasionally nod off, and that was enough for him to stop reading and put his poems back in his pocket. I really like the part where he phrased nodding acquaintance and the phrase everything from the moon to politics. So that is Dom Casmurro. And then I have finally my physical copy of The Name of the Rose by Eco Umberto. I am so excited about this. It's dry, but it's interesting. It's dry and it's interesting. I would say this is a very much literature cake. Like, it is an indulgent kind of read, but there's something really still fascinating and compelling about The Name of the Rose, so I really do enjoy reading this. I also did get Foucault? I don't know how to say it. Pendulum. So this is also by Umberto Eco. Is it Foucault? I'm not really sure. But there's definitely a woo-woo vibe to Umberto Eco's writings. Lastly, in my collection, I wanted to share The Ambassadors by Henry James. This one I came upon while wandering around Barnes & Noble, and I picked it up, did some spot checks, and somehow it just really drew me in. At first, I didn't really understand why it appealed to me, so I thought I would look further into it, and the more and more I kept reading this book, I found an online copy, of course, the more I was like, man, there's something really to it. And that said, it is very labyrinthine. I do tend to like the complex novels that aren't necessarily about the plot, but about the way that the author writes his or her sentences and expresses the story. I am very surprised that I am as interested in this book as I am, because I didn't think I was ever really going to get into Henry James. I kind of classify him as like in the realm of James Joyce, and I figured out why I could not get into James Joyce, especially Ulysses, and it is because his books are too masculine for me, just like Ernest Hemingway is too masculine for me. They're very masculine writers in the way that they are very concise and very blunt with their sentences, and that's not really my flavor when it comes to literature. I prefer more of the poetic, more of the feminine type of writing that is more expressive and expansive in words. I like beautiful writing. I like to feel like I'm experiencing almost a painting when I'm reading, and this surprisingly is of that more poetic, expressive nature than of the masculine variety. I did some research on Henry James, and he is a proponent, an advocate for slow reading, so I thought that was interesting as well and very aligned with my new approaches to reading. So that was a brief book talk. I don't really feel that I need to go into storylines or plots or characters, because I don't look for those things when I choose books. I really choose books that'll give me an experience, and books that are specifically written in a style of their own. So I look for style, but I also look for books that really change the way that I fundamentally think, whether it be through the style it was written in itself or the concepts being explored. Ultimately, these are the vibes that I look for when I'm picking my books. Is the book expressed beautifully, poetically, artistically? That's what I classify as style. And or does this book give me something new to contemplate? Does it completely shake up my worldview, my perspective? Does it challenge me to approach living and thinking and existing in a totally fresh way? So that's what I have for this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.